I came across this game, Deathly Thrones, which is described as a solo roguelike game using a standard deck of 52 cards for gameplay. And first of all, I'm a sucker for these type of pocket mod constructions. This is a P&P game. The files for it were sent to me by the designer. I'll put the link down below. There's a website, deathlythrones.com, and then I printed them out, and I got these are the main rules, the entire rule set, and then I printed out these 7 adventures, and they are at different levels of the game. We have beginner level ones and intermediate level ones. This is called No Escape. A couple of intermediate ones, Fate of the Kingdom, Road to a Legend, and then we have 2 veteran ones, A Family Walk, Heirloom, and this one, Lamiam, is Death the End. In this video, I'm going to show you how you set up the game. I'm going to do a couple of examples of gameplay, not too many because they are, I would say there's a bunch of the adventures, but I would say the replay value is pretty limited because once you go through the story once, they all sort of follow a similar format. There's a little bit of story and some encounters that you have, and then some more story and some more encounters. I would say I don't want to reveal too much. I guess I'll just leave it at that. But I want to give you enough here in the video so you can get a sense of whether this would be something you would like to do. And the first thing really to consider is the type of character you're going to play in the game. And the characters are represented by their health value, which is also their baseline attack strength value, and their defense. And health and defense are represented in this game through the clubs of the ace to 9, ace in this game being a 1, and that is your defense value, and your hearts are your life as well as your strength value. So for this demo, you can be a hero, a barbarian, a magician, or a dwarf, and you can see here the various values they have. They don't get anything beyond the different health and defense values in terms of the character. For this video, I'm going to play a dwarf, so I'm going to start out by having 5 health and 3 defense, and the way you do that is you simply pull the relevant card to the top of the stack, because these values will change during the course of the game, and that is how you set up your character. So that is a character with 3 defense and 5 health, and so this represents a dwarf in the game. The rest of the 52 cards, you don't play with jokers, is you divide them as follows. The 10s, jacks, queens, and kings are divided into, or separated into a stack of 16 cards. These serve as the timer for the game. So as you go through the story, you will turn over one of these cards. The 10 that you turn over represents 1 advancement. A jack is going to represent 2 advancement, and a king will be 4, and a queen will be 3. And you go through this entire stack of the game and use that to advance through the steps of the story. There are 40 steps in each story, and in doing this, you're going to go through those 40 steps. Now, of course, these are going to be shuffled, so the order in which you go through the steps will be different, and therefore the actual steps that you do in the story will be different. So that is, to some extent, I guess, replay value, although in my experience, it's not super so significant in terms of making it different. You might encounter some different things along the way, and I'll show you how this works. What you're left with is called your battle deck. And this is going to be the cards that are not here, and the cards that are not here. And these will be shuffled and drawn, as we'll see, to be the battle values that you have as you go through. So that's really the setup of the game. And to play the game, you're going to choose the story that you're going to be playing here. And as I said, we will I'm going to just do this in a limited way because I don't want to ruin the stories for you. But we're going to take a look. Let's do Odo. I haven't done this one. This is an intermediate level 1. It's called Fate of the Kingdom. And as you open it up, you're going to have narrative here, and we'll look at some of this. So the story in Odo is, you were paid by some peasants to escort them during their long journey to the capital. The last few years have been devastatingly hot, and they blame the king. They accuse him of having rerouted the only river crossing the country for his own needs, causing famine and death, etc. And it says you follow the dried riverbed, now forming a long and wide path toward the southern part of the kingdom. The journey is far from the quiet travel you could have hoped for. Giant scorpions, thirsty beasts, and hyenas that come to eat dead crocodiles are regularly crossing your path. So this is a traveling journey, and you are attempting to reach the end here. So as I said, I'm going to be playing as a dwarf with my 5 health and my 3 defense to start. These values will change during the course of the travels. In addition to, this is all you need to play. I have found it useful to bring in some markers, in this case, these plastic cubes that I have, when I encounter enemies to indicate their baseline starting health and also attack as well as defense. And you'll see how I use them. You don't need to do that, but it saves on some of the calculations, as you'll see. So the way the game works is, and let me pull back a little bit here. Okay, we have a little more space. So my character is going to be here. This is the battle deck from which we will draw, and I'll just give this a shuffle. This is going to be shuffled multiple times during the course of gameplay, as you'll see. And this is the timer deck. So the very first thing we do is we turn over a timing card. The queen represents 3 steps into the journey. And then what we will do here is we go to our little game booklet and we start in step 3. I like to use something to sort of block off the information, so I'm only seeing what is happening here. And there is a code here that's going to tell you what type of encounter it is. In this case, it's a combat encounter. I don't think you really necessarily need to know that. It becomes pretty clear. As we're walking, we are encountering one of these laughing hyenas. And it's telling us that the hyena has a health of 2 and it has no defense. So every time you come upon an enemy, you are going to be fighting that enemy. So using my little cubes here, I'm going to represent the hyena's health here. I don't have any blue cubes because it has no defense. The way the game actually works is you pull cards from the battle deck. The first card you pull is your attack that's added on to your baseline attack. As I mentioned, your health is also your strength is also your attack. So in this case, we're attacking with 12. That's pretty good. And the second card you pull is their attack value, which is added to their strength. They are responding, or they are only attacking with 7. So what that means is 7 minus 12 is 5. And as they have no defense and they only have 2 health, that was a pretty easy defeat of that laughing hyena. And then you take these cards and you put them in the discard. When you run through this battle deck, they will be reshuffled and reused. What you get to do after you finish the encounter is you see what the outcome is. The outcome here is we got a pile of hair. So we didn't get much from that hyena. And the result of that pile of hair is nothing. None of our values were changed. Nothing else happens. And so we move on. So it is mentioned and encouraged. You could sort of make a little story for yourself and continue the thoughts of them wandering on this dry riverbed, and now they've got this pile of hair. We'll see, well, maybe we could do something with this, maybe we can't. And then we move on. Now, we discard the card from the timing deck. These will not be reshuffled. When you get to the end of the timing deck, you will get to the end of the game. So next we pull in a jack, which is going to advance the story by 2. So we move from 3 down to 5. What do we see here? Ooh, a silent cheetah is creeping up on us. This is a slightly stronger enemy, although it still has no defense. It has 3 health of its own. So we continue on. The first card we pull on the battle is our attack. Oh, we got another 7, so we have another 12 attack from us. And the aces in this game are 1, so they're only defending with 4. So once again, we subtract the 4 from our attack of 12, and we can see that we easily dispense with this as well. And then we check again. The outcome is some paw pads. Again, no change to our value. This is just the beginning, and it's looking pretty good, but things can change pretty quickly. So let's do at least 1 or 2 more. So now we pull a king. That's going to advance the story by 4. So we move down to 9. 9 is a yellow sac spider that's creeping along this dry riverbed. Now this does have a slight defense of 1, as well as a health of 3. So we'll indicate the spider here, and again pulling in the first card being our attack of 8. And so that's again another pretty strong attack from us, and it has a pretty weak defense of, or excuse me, its attack is weak at 4. So what this means is our attack is 13, its attack is 4. So the ultimate value of the difference there is 9. It does have 1 defense, so that brings our attack down to 8, but 8 attack still gets through. So obviously we can assign that 8 attack to its health of 3 and dispense with it. Now this brings us to the sort of main decision point of the game, which is how to assign the damage. Let's look at this example, because I don't want to go through and necessarily reveal more of that story to you. Let's look more closely at how this could work if the outcomes were different. The way this went so far, we were just getting much better values. Let's say it was like this, for example. So our attack ultimately here is 6. Our attack value is 6. Its attack value here is 11. So that means ultimately it gets, the difference there is 5. We have a defense of 3, so we defend 3 against that 5. There's 2 points of damage that are going to get through in this example. We have to decide, are we going to take those 2 points of damage off our health, or are we going to take our 2 points of damage off our defense? We can't split them up, but we can decide which to do. And that's really the decision space of the game. Do you choose to weaken yourself in terms of both your health or weaken your defense? And making that choice can have implications further on. So let's say in this case we decided we're going to take the damage off our health. We want to keep our defense strong. What we would do is we would become a dwarf with 3 health as such, and 3 defense, and we would continue on to the next encounter. So that would be the consequences in essence for doing that. And then let's just say, again, the next encounter, let's say we encounter something of similar size with 3 health and 3 defense of its own, just to give an example. So here, our attack against that thing is going to be a 6, and its attack to us is going to be a 7. We still have our 3 defense, so that attack of 1 is not going to get through because it's going to meet with our 3 defense. But our health is only 3. So if, let's just say, in this encounter, the end result was 3 points of damage getting through. If our health goes to 0, we're dead. So at that point, we have no choice but to absorb or to reduce down our defense to nothing. You can exist with nothing. So then all of a sudden we become a hero with just 3 health left moving through. Well, you might say to yourself, how do I get things back? You do get things back because during the course of adventures, and we'll just look here again, trying not to reveal too much, but during the course of adventures, you can have certain encounters that will result in increasing your health. Perhaps you've encountered an enemy and you can sort of narrate the story like you're eating the enemy or whatever, and your health is increasing. Or you can have certain encounters that will result in an increase to your defense. Say you dissect the body of something and you use that scale to increase your defense or whatever. So during the course of the game and having encounters, these things will go both up and down, and that's how you can increase them. You can't get beyond the number that you have here, which is 9 on either side. So that is essentially a look inside the game, a demonstration of how this game works. And what I really like about it is the author's very clever use of a basic system to create different characters with a health and a defense, and to attach that to a card deck and to different stories that play out. So you get a lot of difference in that regard, and the fact that there are all these different little adventures to play gives you this kind of variance. I think for me, where I would love to see the game be developed a bit more is in the fact that as the game goes, your health and your defense are going up and down, but the benefits that you get in the game, the narrative benefits, like you either find nothing or you find something, for example, that doesn't change a stat, are not persistent. They don't have further impact in future events in the game, at least as far as I can tell. I haven't gone through like every single permutation, but I've looked through it enough to sense that this is the case. So in other words, if you dispense with, say, a wolf or something, and all you get from it is a pelt of fur, as opposed to an increase in your stat, that pelt of fur does not come up again, as far as I can tell. So there isn't a sense that you are collecting items that may have use later on. So there isn't a later step where you're asked, like if you have the pelt of fur, then whatever, you can use it to recover a wound or something like that. I think adding in even just that small amount, now I realize when I say small amount, adding in any rules overhead and narrative structure to a game is challenging. But I think having just another layer of that could do so much to develop this. And in fact, it's something that I would think about myself doing just for gameplay to make it a little more narratively interesting, but then also decision space interesting. Because the decision space in the game, as I said, comes with opting to take damage off of somebody's defense or somebody's health, your own or the opponent. And the difficulty I have with that is that thematically, if you're encountering, say, a guard who has a weapon or a shield, and they were wounded, thematically it really makes more sense that the shield would take the damage first, and then the health of the person would take the damage, because they're trying to use the shield to defend themselves. So it does seem a little bit arbitrary to say, well, the decision space of the game is in saying, like, okay, I've got this 2 damage, I'm going to decide which is going to get it, as opposed to I'm encountering a guard, he's got a shield, the shield gets damaged with the attack that I'm able to make. So if I thought about it too much, I felt like that was also against kind of the narrative development of the story. But overall, like, the format is great. I love this Pocket Mod format for anything really gaming related, and the fact that there's a little story here and that you go through some of the events and then you get some more story and you go through some of the events is a very clever way of creating a feeling of an adventure that you have. And to the extent that you could take notes even to build out more what the encounters were, so that it wasn't, just a swordsman, but that there was a little more about the swordsman that was tied into, say, perhaps this story. I think that would add to the flavor. But nevertheless, built into the game, I was hoping that when there were outcomes that were not a benefit or a detriment to my own stats, that instead I would have like I would accrue some sort of inventory that would then impact a future event. So that was my wish for the game. It wasn't there as far as I could tell, but this was a great little system. I enjoyed playing through them, and it was a little bit like I did one and then I just wanted to do another one or wanted to replay one. I'm not sure, you will get different events if you replay it, because you're going to be shuffling through the deck, the timing deck. So you're not always going to start by going to the fourth one. You might shuffle it and start by going to the third one or whatever. That would be different. But again, because there isn't necessarily like a persistent item or a persistent effect, it may have a little bit of a samey feel, even though you're going to be encountering different enemies and things along the way. So that's a look inside Deathly Thrones, a really cleverly done solo roguelike game using a standard deck of 52 cards for gameplay.